Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Ohio, Ms. Kaptur, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Almost 1 in 4 homeowners in our country is underwater, meaning they owe more on their mortgages than their homes are worth. And all of this misery is due to Wall Street's rigging of our economy. But on Wall Street, they're popping champagne corks. The nation's biggest banks, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citigroup, J.P. Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, and Morgan Stanley have been raking in huge profits, all at the expense of the American people. In fact, these institutions have doubled in size through predatory mergers since the fall of 2007, and 6 banks, these 6 banks now control 2/3 of the banking system in our country. They cleaned up with profits in 2010, $51.6 billion in profits, more profits than they made before the American people bailed them out. Main Street is underwater, yet Wall Street's going on a pleasure cruise. It doesn't take a mental giant to figure who got our money. According to a recent report, the economic crisis that Wall Street precipitated has now caused massive tax revenue shortfalls for the federal government and our state governments, totaling nearly $300 billion. This is why people are at one another's throats in Wisconsin and Ohio and other places. So ordinary Americans, teachers, police, firemen, are being pink-slipped, and the American people are being forced to accept cuts in government services while Wall Street keeps winning and winning big. They know well how to win for themselves. This year, Bank of America is receiving an income tax refund. Are you ready for this? $666 million, America, for 2010. Now that followed $3.5 billion in refunds that Bank of America reported in 2009. Bank of America's federal income tax benefit this year is roughly 2 times the Obama administration's proposed cuts to the Community Development Block Grant Program, which is a lifeline to communities such as I represent, where unemployment is still over 9%. 6 banks, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citigroup, J.P. Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, and Morgan Stanley together paid income tax at an approximate rate of 11%. Oh, those poor companies. Of their pre-U.S. tax earnings in 2009 and 10. Had they paid 35% like every other honest business in this country, the federal government would have received an additional $13 billion in tax revenue. You know how much that is? That's enough to cover the salaries of 132,000 teachers whose jobs have been lost since 2008. Who do you think's caused all the layoffs? Wells Fargo reportedly received a $4 billion federal income tax refund on $18 billion in pre-tax income in 2009 and only paid 7.5% of its pre-tax income of $19 billion in 2010. Its net federal income tax benefit for 2009 and 10 combined is $2.5 billion, which equals the Obama administration's cuts to the low-income energy assistance program that is vital in cold weather to senior citizens, particularly women over the age of 80 years in districts like I represent. So who took their money? Pretty clear to me. Banks use a variety of mechanisms to avoid corporate income taxes, including offshore tax shelters. 50% of these 6 big banks have 1,871 foreign subsidiaries incorporated in jurisdictions that we know as offshore tax havens like the Cayman Islands. The Bank of America operates 371 tax-sheltered subsidiaries and 204 in the Cayman Islands alone. For Goldman Sachs, 75% of its foreign subsidiaries are incorporated in offshore tax havens. So who's paying their freight? You are, the American people. closing tax loopholes for the financial sector, making them pay their fair share of taxes, and I would support imposing the financial speculation tax could generate more than $150 billion in federal tax revenue, and what could be more fair to those who cause such harm to the American people. Something's really out of kilter in America, and it's not the state budgets. It's the balance of power in our political system. Everywhere you go, big money and Wall Street win, and the American people pay. Mr. Speaker, I just say to the American people, think about who's hurt our republic, and it's not the American working people. Mr. Speaker, I yield back my remaining time.
Thank you very much. The General Lady yields back. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until noon today.